At our anniversary, she handed me divorce papers, but her sister raised a glass to my future with her. If that twist caught you off guard, hit subscribe, tap that like button, and share your thoughts in the comments. Because what happened that night was nothing anyone could have predicted. The evening began with soft lights and polished silverware. We were seated in the private room of one of the most expensive restaurants in the city, the kind with chandeliers that dripped light like honey and violins playing in the background. My wife, Emily, had organized the entire evening, or so I thought. She insisted on inviting everyone. Our families, close friends, even colleagues from her law firm. She wanted an audience, she always did. But I told myself it was fine, that maybe this time she wanted to celebrate us properly, that maybe she remembered the years we had fought side by side to build something together. I wore the suit she liked, navy with a crisp white shirt. Emily shimmered in a black evening dress that drew eyes as soon as she walked into the room. She loved being the center of attention, and tonight she certainly was. She greeted guests with air kisses, laughter that carried too loud, gestures that filled the space. I stayed close, smiling, shaking hands, accepting congratulations on our anniversary. I felt proud, in a quiet way. 12 years wasn't nothing. It was sacrifice, effort, time. It was love, or at least what I thought love was supposed to be. The room buzzed with conversation, the clink of wine glasses, the scent of steak and truffle risotto filling the air. Emily's younger sister, Sarah, sat across from me, her auburn hair catching the glow of the candles. She was quieter than Emily always had been, though she carried a spark in her eyes that Emily often dismissed. She smiled at me once, briefly, warmly. I smiled back, unaware that her presence that night would become the turning point of my life. The speeches began, the toasts, the laughter. People raised their glasses to 12 wonderful years, to love that lasts, to a couple who inspire us all. I nodded, smiled, thanked them. Emily leaned against me, her hand on my arm, her laugh soft in my ear. For a fleeting moment I believed the night was what it looked like, a celebration of us. But under the table I felt her shift. The warmth in her laugh vanished. The softness in her eyes hardened. I didn't know it yet, but the stage was already set. She had planned this moment not as a celebration, but as a performance. And I was about to learn just how cruelly she could play her part. The waiter refilled glasses, the last toast faded, and a hush fell as Emily rose from her chair. Her smile spread wide, her voice carrying across the room with ease. "I want to thank you all for being here tonight," she said. 12 years is a long time, and it deserves recognition. Everyone clapped politely, eyes fixed on her. I felt my chest swell with pride, waiting for her to turn toward me, to say the words that mattered. Instead, she reached under the table, pulled out a slim folder, and laid it flat in front of me with a snap. My heart jolted, the room tilted, and then she said it, words so sharp they cut through every layer of sound. "With this man, it's over." The laughter stopped. The glasses froze midair. I stared at the folder, my mind blank, my body rigid. Inside, I could see the edges of the papers, legal papers, divorce papers. Emily's eyes sparkled, not with love, not with warmth, but with triumph. She had waited for this moment, crafted it, savored it, and she had chosen to humiliate me in front of everyone we knew. The silence was unbearable. I felt every eye on me, waiting for me to break, to shout, to plead. But I did none of that. I reached for the folder, pulled it toward me, and laid my hand flat on top. My face was calm, my voice steady when I finally spoke. "Then let's not waste anyone's time." A murmur rippled through the room, shock, disbelief. Emily's smile faltered just for a second. She hadn't expected calm. She had expected collapse. But I gave her nothing. Only silence, only composure. The papers sat between us, and I was ready to sign them right there at the table. And that was the exact moment her younger sister, Sarah, rose from her seat, glass in hand, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "To his future," she said, her eyes on me and only me. "And if he's free, then I'll drink to the chance that his future might just be with me." The room exploded in gasps. every face snapping toward her, then to me, then to Emily. Wine glasses wavered, whispers darted, eyes widened. Emily's face went pale, her mouth opening with nothing but rage and shock. And me? For the first time that night, I smiled. The silence after Sarah's toast was thick enough to choke on. Forks hovered above plates, glasses froze mid-air, and every head turned as if the universe had snapped its fingers. I sat there with the divorce papers spread before me, my wife standing stiff and pale, and her younger sister holding a glass high with the kind of calm bravery that shook the entire room. Her words hadn't been a joke, not the way she said them. They were steady, deliberate, sharp as crystal. To his future with me. Emily's face twisted, her polished mask slipping for the first time that night. Her lips parted, her eyes burning holes into her sister, but nothing came out. The queen of appearances, the woman who thrived on spectacle, had been outdone in her own game. I could see it, the fury battling with disbelief, the desperate search for control that had suddenly been yanked away. She wanted the crowd to laugh at Sarah, to dismiss it as a joke, but the crowd didn't. They stayed still, waiting, hanging on what would come next. Sarah didn't sit down. She stood with her glass lifted, her auburn hair glowing under the chandeliers, her eyes locked on mine. There was no tremor in her voice when she added, "I think we've all seen tonight who deserves respect, and it's not the one waving papers like a trophy." That line broke the room open. Gasps spread like wildfire. Some of Emily's friends covered their mouths. My colleagues glanced between us, trying to pretend they weren't fascinated. Even Emily's parents shifted uncomfortably, their gaze falling on her rather than me. I didn't move. I didn't have to. My silence was louder than any speech. I sat with one hand still resting on the folder, the other around my glass. I raised it slowly, deliberately, my eyes never leaving Sarah's. A murmur spread, then glasses began to rise around the table. Not everyone, but enough. Her toast became real in that moment. My wife's plan for a public execution had turned into her own trial, and the jury had chosen sides. Emily slammed her hand on the table, the sharp sound jolting the room. "Enough!" she snapped, her voice trembling. "Sarah, sit down. This is our anniversary. This is not about you." She turned to the guests, forcing a smile. "My sister has a habit of dramatics. Please ignore her. This dinner is meant to be." "Meant to be what?" Sarah cut in, her tone calm but piercing. "Meant to be your show? Your little scene where you play the victim and paint him as nothing? You've done it for years, Emily. But not tonight. Not anymore." Her words hung heavy. People shifted in their seats. Emily's father cleared his throat, as if to speak, but Sarah pressed on, her voice growing stronger. "You wanted to humiliate him in front of everyone. You thought tearing him down would make you look powerful. But all you've done is show the truth. He's worth more than you ever gave him credit for. And I think it's time someone finally said it." My pulse pounded, not from fear, but from something I hadn't felt in years: vindication. Every insult Emily had thrown at me behind closed doors, every sharp remark disguised as a joke, every way she had chipped at me little by little, it was all unraveling in front of her guests, her family, her world, and I hadn't said a single word. Emily's eyes shot toward me, desperate, demanding. She wanted me to defend her, to pull her back from the edge, to play the loyal husband one last time. But I didn't. I simply looked at her with the same calm I had carried all night. That calm terrified her more than rage ever could. The waiter, poor man, appeared at the wrong moment with a tray of fresh champagne flutes. He froze when he saw the scene, then tried to retreat, but Sarah plucked a glass from his tray without breaking eye contact with me. "To new beginnings," she said again, softer this time, but every word deliberate. She raised her glass higher, and once more the room followed. Guests who had hesitated before now joined in, compelled by the force of her conviction. Glass after glass lifted. The clinking sound was sharp, echoing like a verdict. Emily's hands trembled as she tried to gather herself. She grabbed the folder, flipping it open, pushing the papers toward me. "Fine," she spat. "If this is what you want, Sign them now. Show them all. Prove you're so eager to throw away 12 years. Her voice cracked at the end, but her eyes begged me to falter. I picked up the pen she had placed inside. The room held its breath. Every guest leaned forward. Even Sarah's gaze didn't waver as I uncapped it. Emily thought she still had control, that I would panic or stall, that I would try to salvage dignity by arguing. Instead, I pressed the pen to the paper and signed my name with one slow, deliberate stroke. The gasp that followed was a sound I'll never forget. Emily staggered back, her composure shattered. She wanted drama, but she hadn't expected silence to be the loudest weapon of all. I placed the signed papers neatly on the table, pushed them toward her, and looked up at Sarah. For the first time that night, I allowed myself a small smile. The room erupted in whispers. Some of her colleagues were already pulling out phones, their eyes alight with the promise of gossip. Her mother covered her mouth, horrified. Her father looked away, ashamed. Emily stood frozen, trapped in the chaos she had created. And across from her, Sarah raised her glass one final time, her eyes fixed on mine. "To his future," she said again. And this time the entire room drank. The sound of clinking glasses filled the air like a verdict being sealed. I sat still at the long table, the divorce papers signed, my wife trembling, and her sister standing tall with a glass in her hand. Around us, whispers spread like wildfire, every guest trying to piece together what they had just witnessed. The anniversary dinner that Emily had orchestrated as her grand stage had turned into something else entirely, something she no longer controlled. She stood there, clutching the folder as if holding it tighter could rewind what had just happened. But her face betrayed her, pale and crumbling, her eyes darting wildly between me, Sarah, and the guests who no longer applauded her performance. Sarah didn't sit down right away. She held her ground, her chin raised, her eyes locked on me with a defiance that was almost protective. I couldn't remember the last time anyone had looked at me that way, as if I were worth defending. The silence stretched until Emily broke it, her voice brittle and strained. "This is insane," she said. "You all don't understand. He isn't what you think he is. He's weak, he's pathetic, he's—" She stumbled over her words, realizing too late that the audience she had expected to laugh with her was no longer on her side. The room had shifted. Her best friend, seated near the end of the table, tried to clap politely, to bring the mood back to Emily's control, but it failed. The sound died in the air like a lonely echo. Even her parents refused to meet her eyes. I leaned back in my chair, silent, my calm more damning than any insult she could throw. The strength wasn't in shouting. It was in refusing to play her game anymore. Sarah finally lowered her glass and set it gently on the table, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "You've humiliated him long enough, Emily. You thought tonight would be your crown jewel of cruelty, but all you've done is show everyone exactly who you are." She paused, her eyes burning into her sister's. "And maybe it's time he finally has someone who sees him for what he is." The words landed heavy, sharper than any knife. Guests shifted uncomfortably, some nodding, some glancing at me with new eyes, as if seeing me for the first time. I felt the weight of 12 years of silence pressing on my chest, 12 years of swallowing insults behind closed doors, of being diminished piece by piece. Tonight it all broke open, and it wasn't me who broke it. It was Sarah, the one person no one expected to stand by me. Emily's voice rose, trembling with rage. "You're pathetic," she spat at me, her finger jabbing in the air. "Do you think this makes you look strong? Sitting there, letting my sister make a fool of you? Do you think anyone will actually respect you after this? You're nothing, and you always have been." Her words might have landed once, years ago, but not now, not tonight. I stared at her, steady, unflinching, and then I said quietly, "If I'm nothing, then why are you the one shaking?" The room erupted in murmurs, some gasping, some even laughing nervously at the sharpness of it. Emily's hand trembled at her side, the papers she clutched rattling slightly as her confidence drained out of her. For the first time in our marriage, she had no comeback. She opened her mouth, closed it again, then turned toward her sister with a look of pure venom. "You think this is funny, Sarah?" she hissed. "You think you can just stand there, undermine me in front of everyone and take his side? You've always been jealous of me. Always. And now you've sunk so low you'd throw yourself at my husband." Gasps rippled through the guests again. But Sarah didn't flinch. She stood straighter, her voice calm and unwavering. "Not jealous," she said. "Just tired of watching you destroy someone who deserves more than your bitterness." She turned her gaze back to me, and for a moment the whole room seemed to vanish. "If he's free, then I won't stand by and pretend I don't see his worth." My heart pounded, not from fear but from something new, something dangerous and alive. The way she looked at me was nothing like the way Emily ever had. There was no mockery, no calculation, no cruel edge. Just truth. And that truth silenced everyone. Emily's face twisted, rage bubbling over. She slammed the folder onto the table, the sound cracking like a whip. "Fine," she shouted. "Take him. See if you can do better. But don't come crying to me when he disappoints you like he disappointed me." Her words were acid, but they slid off me like rain. The woman who had spent 12 years controlling the narrative had just lost it in front of everyone. Her composure gone, her cruelty naked for all to see. I leaned forward, picked up my glass, and raised it slowly. My voice was calm, steady, almost too quiet, but it carried in the silence that followed her outburst. "To freedom," I said. Dozens of glasses rose again, clinking in unison. Emily's eyes darted desperately from face to face, but no one stood with her this time. She had lost them. She had lost everything she had tried to build with her performance. And I felt a power I had never known before. Not because of revenge, not because of anger, but because I finally saw myself clearly. And for once, so did everyone else. And Sarah's unwavering gaze told me she saw it too. The dinner that was supposed to end with my humiliation had turned into her undoing. And the night was not over yet. The air in the restaurant was heavy, like the moment before a storm breaks. Glasses had already clinked, toasts had already been made, and still my wife stood trembling with the divorce papers clutched in her hands. Her carefully orchestrated show had collapsed into rubble, and everyone was staring at her as if they were seeing her for the first time. The mask was gone. What remained was raw, ugly anger that no one could ignore. She looked around the table, desperate for an ally, but every face had turned away. Her colleagues avoided her gaze. Her parents stared into their laps. Even her closest friends kept their eyes on their glasses. The spotlight she had craved all night had become a judgment seat. I sat there in silence, my hand resting on the table, my breathing steady. I didn't need to move. I didn't need to fight. Everything she had planned had backfired on its own. The power she thought she had over me was gone, burned out by her own cruelty. And across the table, Sarah's presence filled the silence like a flame in the dark. She stood tall, unafraid, her glass still in her hand though she had already spoken. Her gaze hadn't left me, not once. Emily finally slammed the folder shut and shoved it into her bag with shaking hands. "This isn't over," she snapped, her voice breaking under the weight of her failure. "You'll regret this. Both of you." She looked at me, her face twisted with rage, then turned to her sister with venom dripping from her words. "You're pathetic, Sarah. Always in my shadow, always wishing you could be me. And now you're so desperate you'd take my leftovers." The words were meant to sting, but they rang hollow. The guests didn't nod or laugh or support her. They only watched in uncomfortable silence, some even frowning at her cruelty. Sarah, however, didn't flinch. She set her glass down with deliberate calm and said, "If he's your leftovers, then why does he look stronger sitting silent than you do screaming?" A gasp rippled through the room, but Sarah didn't stop. "You've spent years breaking him down, Emily. But look around. Who's standing with you now? Who's raising their glass to you? No one. Because they've all seen what I've seen. He's the one worth standing beside." The tension snapped. For a moment, no one breathed. Emily's face went pale, then flushed red, then pale again. She opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came. She had no weapon left. Not tonight. I rose from my chair slowly, every movement deliberate. All eyes turned to me, waiting to see if I would explode, if I would deliver some final speech, if I would lash out. But I didn't. I simply stood, adjusted my jacket, and placed my napkin gently on the table. Then I looked at Emily one last time. 12 years, I said quietly, but the weight in my voice carried across the room. And this is how it ends. Not with me broken, but with you exposed. You wanted everyone to see me as nothing. Instead, they see you for what you really are. She staggered back a step, her hands clenching at her sides, her lips trembling with words she couldn't form. And in that silence, I turned to Sarah. She didn't hesitate. She stepped forward, slipping her arm into mine, her expression calm, unshaken. The entire room watched as we moved together toward the door, side by side, leaving the table behind. Gasps followed us, whispers swirled, but none of it mattered. Each step away from that table felt like shedding chains I had carried for years. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The sound of Emily's ragged breathing, the sight of her crumbling composure, the silence of the guests, those were enough. That was the end of her show. The waiter held the door open as we stepped out into the night. The air was cool, the city lights sharp against the dark sky. I breathed deeply, my chest light for the first time in years. Beside me, Sarah matched my pace, her grip steady on my arm. She didn't speak at first. She didn't need to. Her presence said everything, that I wasn't alone, that I wasn't invisible, that someone had chosen to stand with me when it mattered most. Finally, as we reached the edge of the sidewalk, she looked at me and said softly, "You didn't deserve what she did to you. You deserve better. And maybe now you'll finally believe it." I turned to her, and for the first time that night, I let myself smile without hesitation. It wasn't a smile of revenge or triumph. It was a smile of release, freedom, the kind that comes only when the chains finally fall. Behind us, in that glittering restaurant, Emily remained alone with her fury, her pride shattered, her performance ruined. She had walked me into the room hoping to destroy me in front of everyone. Instead, she destroyed herself, and I walked out stronger, not by shouting, not by fighting, but by standing still until the truth revealed itself. And in that moment, as Sarah's hand tightened gently on mine, I realized something. Sometimes the most powerful answer is silence, and sometimes the greatest revenge is simply walking away. If this story gripped you until the very end, don't forget to subscribe, tap like, and share in the comments what you would have done if her sister had raised a glass to you that night.